Day 13 of the war with Hamas, and the IDF remains mobilized and awaiting orders in assembly areas for the expected ground operation into Gaza to eliminate the Hamas terror threat. 2 leading Hamas figures were eliminated, and a U.S.-brokered humanitarian corridor is set to open tomorrow in Rafah on the Egyptian border. And ILTV Steve Leibovich reports.
Day 13 of the war with Hamas. IDF ground forces remain in assembly areas ahead of the expected operation to eliminate Hamas in Gaza. Intermittent rocket fire is continuing from Gaza, hitting the surrounding communities and central Israel. This as the Air Force and artillery continues pounding Hamas targets in Gaza. Overnight, the strikes killed Rafat Abu Hilal, head of the Popular Resistance Committee, a small terror group in Gaza. A separate strike killed Hamas' so-called First Lady, Dr. Jamila al-Shanit, widow of Hamas founder Abdelaziz al-Rantisi. Separately, the IDF said it targeted and killed at least 10 members of Hamas's so-called Nukba commando forces, who led the October 7th onslaught that murdered some 1,400 Israelis. In addition, the IDF said it destroyed hundreds of Hamas sites in the last 24 hours, including anti-tank missile launch sites, tunnel shafts, intelligence infrastructure, and various command centers. At the start of the war, Israel had bombed the Rafah crossing to Egypt to prevent all entry of materials shortly after the war broke out. Now the site is being repaired to allow U.S.-brokered humanitarian aid to cross. Speaking from Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany after leaving Israel, U.S. President Biden announced that Egyptian President al-Sisi had agreed to open the Rafah crossing to allow 20 trucks carrying humanitarian aid to Gaza beginning tomorrow. Biden said the crossing will not be open to people.
For this purpose, not to allow a lot of people out, but to open it up for this purpose.
For humanitarian assistance?
For the trucks to be able to get through.
And is that just?
Trucks? Up to 20 trucks. This has been a very blunt negotiation I've had.
The Prime Minister's office confirmed that Israel will not thwart deliveries of food, water, or medicine from Egypt as long as they are limited to civilians in the south of the Gaza Strip and don't go to Hamas terrorists. Netanyahu also stated Israel's humanitarian demands.
ראשית, דרשתי את החזרת החטופים, ואנחנו עובדים יחד להחזרתם בכל דרך אפשרית. שנית, עד להשבתם, אנחנו דורשים ביקורים של נציגי הצלב האדום אצל חטופינו. שלישית, לא נאפשר סיוע הומניטרי של מזון ותרופות משטחנו לרצועת עזה.
Nearly 300,000 Israelis have been evacuated from their homes in the Gaza periphery. The majority of these 300,000 are from the Gaza border area, with about 10% coming from the north. The Ministry of Health announced today that since the start of the conflict, 4,629 Israelis had been wounded, 12 remain in critical condition, and 279 in serious condition. The IDF said it has now identified 203 Israelis and foreign nationals believed held hostage in Gaza.
The IDF continues searching for bodies still missing in the Gaza envelope, as 2 more of a woman and a child were found just yesterday in Kibbutz Be'eri.
Yes, we still have bodies lying around, but it is a war zone, so we cannot go over in order to bring them back. There can be their snipers, there can be also mines. We don't know what they have left there. It's not clear.
IDF soldiers patrol the wrecked homes in Kfar Aza in search of more missing bodies laying around the devastating sites. 2 of those bodies found just yesterday are of a woman and a child discovered in Kibbutz Be'eri. The kibbutz has already seen over 130 murdered in the October 7 massacre. Moti Bukchin, the spokesperson for the Zaka Emergency Service, revealed that the woman's body was found on a staircase, while the child's body was located on the upper floor. It's believed that they were attempting to flee with bags when the terrorists shot them and set their home ablaze. Bukchin expressed his anguish to Ynet News, stating, "We've been there for a week and a half praying for these horrors to end, and it just doesn't stop." He also highlighted that Zaka is still in desperate need of essential equipment, including body bags, stretchers, and jumpsuits. Before the massacre, Kibbutz Be'eri was home to over 1,000 residents, making it the largest kibbutz in the Eshkol Regional Council. Over a tenth of the kibbutz population was murdered within a matter of hours. In Be'eri, Israeli security forces managed to eliminate over 100 Hamas terrorists, aiming to protect the residents of this community. And we're now joined by Director of the International Resilience Center in Sderot, one of the cities hardly hit by the massacre, Ayelet Shmuel. Ayelet, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you feeling these days? Take me back to the morning of October 7th, seeing the pickup truck full of terrorists in your city.
So I can tell you what other people are saying, because that morning on Saturday, I was actually out of the city. I was in Italy. I went for a conference to represent Sderot. And while I was there, I was hearing all the horrible things that were going on. It started with a rocket attack, and then I got calls from friends telling me that there are terrorists in town, calls from my family that lives in Ashkelon and my son that is there saying that there are terrorists. So I was getting all this information when I was there. I can tell you from the people in the city that it was, you can see some of the images now, it was horrifying. From what we know now, we had roughly 3 or 4 jeeps full of terrorists that came into the city. They spread out throughout time, and they went on a killing spree. They killed anyone that they saw on the street. That was while we were under a heavy rocket attack. And they took over the police station, which they knew was going to be a very strategic area. And then once they had that, it was very hard to get control over the city. So for the first 3 to 4 hours, no one was there. The army wasn't there, and we were able to, this is what's left of the police station, which you're seeing right now, or was left. Now it's completely flat. And during those hours, there were 3 or 4 hours that I guess the city was fighting with the residents that had guns, with the security team from the municipality, and with the policemen that were in the area. So that was all that we had for 3-4 hours. And we ended up having 45 casualties in the city. Many of them were policemen.
Ayelet, I can only imagine what you went through. I remember close to 7 a.m. that morning, I got the images of the first truck. I was sure it was AI. If we're in the area of AI, this is what I thought it was. Can only imagine what you guys went through. Now, currently, the population of Sderot, you told me a city of 36,000 people, many of them evacuated and spread across Israel. Right. What are the plans for the coming period and really for the day after this really ends?
Well, it's really hard to say, right? I mean, I think first we need to understand that the evacuation happened in stages, right? The minute it was safe, and it took a while until it was safe, the minute it was safe, about, I think, the third day, people were evacuating themselves and just leaving the city on their own. And the mayor was pushing for it. If you can leave, leave, because it's not safe. Because there are so many rockets, hundreds of rockets, and the Iron Dome, I think, at this point it doesn't even exist here. So back then we were having a lot of direct hits, and we were having all the shootings. So it was safer to just leave the city. Afterwards, there was a decision that the city can actually start evacuating people, and it is safe. So most of the people have been evacuated to hotels all over the country, right? We have people in Eilat, we have people in Eilat, the Dead Sea, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, all over. What we know right now is that there's a lot of uncertainty. So we have, I guess, the promise from the government that our people can be in those hotels and still out of the city by until November 2nd. And afterwards, we're going to have to come up with a plan. And from what I understand, no one is going to come back here if it's not safe. So, and the city and the government understand that. Yes. So there's a plan right now to figure out what it is that we're going to do, knowing that it's uncertain. So the short-term goal is we're creating small municipalities in every hotel, in every area that we have our people, so they have services like social services and education and resilience and mental health support, everything that they need. But it is not easy to run a city where your residents are spread out all across town. And you're seeing the mayor running this operation for 12, 13 days now straight.
Ayelet, we can only hope Sderot will go back to what it was before, even more safe, because you guys have been suffering for so many years. Thank you so much for joining us today, and stay safe.
Experience the power of truth with ILTV News. If you're looking for quality content and captivating visuals, join our news community and become an integral part of our team as we embark on a mission to unveil the real Israel, dismantling the web of lies and misinformation that surround reporting on Israel. By subscribing to ILTV News, you will not only have access to the latest updates, but you will also amplify our message, creating a ripple effect that carries the truth far and wide. Subscribe today and help reshape the narrative. Available on the web, Android, and Apple.
The northern border remains hot. One person was wounded when Hezbollah fired anti-tank rockets at several IDF posts along the border. The city of Kiryat Shmona was struck as cross-border skirmishes continue. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovich.
According to the IDF, 9 rockets were launched from Lebanon into northern Israel, setting off sirens in Kiryat Shmona and several nearby communities, including Metula. 4 rockets were intercepted by the Iron Dome air defense system. At least 1 rocket landed in the northern city, causing no injuries or damage. Many, if not most of the city's residents have evacuated. Rambam Hospital in Haifa said it was admitting 1 person who was listed in moderate condition as a result of one of the missile attacks. Shortly before the rocket sirens, the IDF said one of its tanks shelled 2 Hezbollah anti-tank guided missile launch positions in southern Lebanon, where the military identified an attempt to carry out an attack. Hezbollah said 2 of its members were killed in southern Lebanon while they were engaging in fighting. The incidents were the latest in a series of skirmishes on the northern border with the Iran-backed Hezbollah as well as Hamas operatives there. The tit-for-tat attacks have remained limited in scope amid threats from Israel that Lebanon could suffer if Hezbollah steps up its attacks. Meanwhile, in Beirut, anti-U.S. protests continue. Lebanese security forces used tear gas and water cannons to repel scores of protesters demonstrating President Biden's solidarity mission to Israel. The United States has been targeted for criticism across the region for pledging ironclad support for Israel in its war with Hamas in Gaza. Elsewhere in Beirut, thousands of protesters gathered at a rally called by and in support of Hezbollah.
British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak visited Israel today and has pledged to work with international partners to secure the release of individuals abducted by Hamas to Gaza, emphasizing the importance of preventing further violence and providing humanitarian aid in the region.
And stress that we absolutely support Israel's right to defend itself in line with international law, to go after Hamas, to take back hostages, deter further incursions, and to strengthen your security for the long term.
British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's arrival in Israel today emphasizes the United Kingdom's unwavering support for the nation during these difficult times. After meeting with the families of individuals abducted by Hamas to Gaza, Sunak conveyed his commitment to securing their release. He stated in a post, "To have a child taken from you is a parent's worst nightmare. Working with our partners, we're determined to secure the release of the hostages taken by Hamas terrorists." Sunak further met with Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Herzog. He expressed condolences for the loss of life in Israel and Gaza and urged to refer to Hamas as terrorists only. The British Prime Minister's visit extends beyond Israel as he's expected to meet with other regional leaders. Sunak underlined the importance of preventing further escalation of violence in the region and providing humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza and for British citizens trapped there to be able to leave.
You describe this as Israel's darkest hour. Well, then it's for me to say I'm proud to stand here with you in Israel's darkest hour. As your friend, we will stand with you in solidarity, we will stand with your people, and we also want you to win.
Thank you. Thank you.
The United States vetoed a resolution on Wednesday that called for a humanitarian pause, citing the omission of Israel's right to defend itself as the reason for the veto. And ILTV's Devo Klein has more.
The United States vetoed a resolution on Wednesday that called for a humanitarian pause in the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. The reason for the veto, according to U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, was the resolution's omission of Israel's right to defend itself. Thomas-Greenfield stated that the United States is disappointed this resolution made no mention of Israel's right of self-defense. Like every nation in the world, Israel has the inherent right of self-defense, as reflected in Article 51 of the UN Charter. The U.S. was the only member to vote against the resolution, but as one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, its vote acted as a veto. The resolution, which was put forward by Brazil and negotiated over several days, received 12 votes in favor, with France among them, and with Russia and the United Kingdom choosing to abstain. The resolution itself strongly condemned all violence and hostilities against civilians, as well as acts of terrorism. It also explicitly denounced the terrorist attacks by Hamas and called for all parties to adhere to their international law obligations. Russia had proposed amendments to the resolution, one calling for a humanitarian ceasefire, and the other seeking to condemn indiscriminate attacks on civilians and civilian objects in Gaza. Both amendments were rejected as they failed to receive the minimum 9 yes votes required.
And now we're interviewing the Angels in Orange all year round, and this time is no different, as the Angels of United Hatzalah treated the victims of the Hamas massacre and are doing everything in their power to help with everything they can. And we're now joined by United Hatzalah founder and president, Ellie Beer. Ellie, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you feeling these days, and what does a day in your life look like really since October 7?
I am feeling terrible. My life changed, literally. I'm not the same man as October 6th. My life literally changed, and I think everyone's life changed, and we feel something different. We feel like a big load of sadness fell on all of us, and it's very hard to cope with it. Very, very hard. And when people ask me, how are you? What am I going to say? Like, you ask me a question. I think if I ask you the same question, you'll have the same answer. And I have more because I seen terrible, terrible, terrible things. I hear terrible things all day. And I'm sure you too, because you're interviewing people. And I don't know, I feel bad for you when you go back home and your kids ask you, how are you?
Yes, of course, Ellie, you've seen it all really firsthand. Yesterday, you met with President Biden along with Secretary of State Antony Blinken, along with more doctors and first responders. How did the meeting go? What did you tell them, Ellie? What did you hear from the Americans yourself over there?
Well, I was blown away from the amount of empathy and love that the American people, and especially the President and Secretary of State, showed us during this meeting. This was an hour and almost an hour and a half meeting that went on with a selected small group that the President went to each one-on-one and talked to, not once, but twice, and sometimes 3 times. And the President did not want to leave us. And it was like they were rushing after a while. The President saying, we have a whole conference of journalists waiting and everything. And he said, I want to hear more stories. I want to see what these people need. I want to hear more. And he was going on and asking me personally about United Hatzalah. I told the President what's our focus on, a 90-second response. United Hatzalah is all about getting there fast. And you could see more than ever now the importance of United Hatzalah. To have a fast response is for babies choking, for someone having a heart attack, or someone falling into a pool, a child falling into a pool, and you need to rescue that child. You have 90 seconds to save them. But more than ever, you can see now how you need first response, immediate response for terrorism and war acts against human beings, against citizens. The fact that we had hundreds of volunteers who live in these communities. I told the President we are like Uber, but for free, and we save lives. He got it. I said we have a fast response because we have volunteers. You don't have to pay them. All you have to do is let them know something is happening nearby, and they jump out of bed, they jump out of synagogue, and even out of mosque, wherever they are, If they are volunteer of United Hatzalah, we'll track them if they're close to someone that needs help. And that's what happened the day of October 7th. The terrible, terrible day that I will never forget in my life, where we found ourselves in front of a Holocaust in Israel, a Holocaust in Israel. More and more you talk about people, you talk to people, you really realize that this was a massacre that meant to be a Holocaust. These Nazi, ISIS, Hamas people were looking to kill every human being in Israel, every animal in Israel. They went around shooting mothers in front of the kids, shooting children in front of their mothers, husbands, wives, parents, grandparents. And we actually found ourselves in a situation where all of a sudden, we see hundreds and hundreds of people who are murdered. What do you do? How do you do triage to so many people? And especially, how do you do triage when you have missiles on your head and you have shooting on your head? But I was very, very proud of all of those incredible volunteers who put their life in danger and went in under fire, and they saved many, many people. United Hatzalah volunteers saved a lot of people. I just told the president this whole thing, and the president just was crying. I saw him crying, taking a tissue and wiping his tears. And it was sincere. It was sincere. It was a person who really cares about these kind of things. And he was telling me that he told me his son and his wife died in a car accident, and his other son died in a war. And he said that his pain was so hurtful. His pain was so hard. And now he feels the same pain looking at us and looking at Israel. And he said the pain that he had when he lost his kids is the same pain he has now. And that was unbelievable. I was blown away from that. And he said to me that we came here to support the people and to give to uplift. I told him he uplifted the Israelis, their spirits. He uplifted the Jewish people. I don't care who the president is. The president coming to Israel during a war, putting his life in danger, to come here to give chizuk, to give strength to the people, is unbelievable. And I really think, as an American, I'm first of all a Jew, I'm second of all Israeli, and an American. I'm so proud. And combined with all that, wearing this orange vest, it's terrible.
Ellie, it was an honor listening to you, and you should definitely really, really be proud. We're adding the QR code of United Hatzalah during the whole interview on our screen. 7,000 volunteers from diverse background, which is really incredibly inspirational. Ellie, please stay safe.
Thank you for having me, and please support United Hatzalah. You have that Q card, the Q code. Just click on it and support buying medical supplies for our volunteers.
Thank you very much, Ellie. Toda rabba.
Toda rabba.
Now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Partly cloudy skies are expected tonight around the country with lows of around 18 degrees Celsius or 64 degrees Fahrenheit. Tomorrow skies will clear up and temperatures will sit at 28 degrees Celsius or 83 degrees Fahrenheit. Over the weekend, temperatures should rise significantly. More than 1,300 babies, children, elderly men, women, soldiers were murdered in cold blood by Hamas terrorists on October 7. The scale of the tragedy is so large that we cannot mention every name right now, but we will slowly share their stories and ensure their memories live on. That's all for today's news. For more updates from Israel on all your devices, check out our ILTV channel, subscribe to our ILTV newsletter, and of course, do not forget to check out our new and improved website, ILTV.tv, with all of the latest news from the heart of the State of Israel. I'm Amit Harari. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, and thank you so much for watching.